welcome. And let's also extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists, Vikram, for this discussion.
Yes, a discussion around upskilling, reskilling and learning for the future. Raghu Sundaram is the Dean at NYU Stern School of Business. He joins us here. Can we have you up on stage along with him? Jeff Maggioncalda, the Chief Executive Officer at Coursera. Joy Jones, also Chief Executive Officer for Graduate Management Admission Council. And Martin Reza is the Vice President, South Asia Region for World Bank. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. We're looking forward to a sterling discussion this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. We'll get started. I know the program is running a little bit late, but I promise I have a very, very fast set of speakers here. They're going to catch the train very fast. So we're going to try very hard. Having said all of this is a very important topic, as you just heard. As you think about what is happening in India and globally in most developed markets, even in most developing markets and even in the developed markets, what employers want versus what the students are learning today, there is a very, very big divide. And therefore, this topic that we have for today is what we are going to focus a lot around. We're going to talk about diversity, development. We're going to talk a lot about this from this esteemed panel that I have. I'm going to quickly introduce them and get going. Martin spent a lot of time in World Bank. He's been in the region, understands the region quite well, lived in a lot of the markets in the region, so we'll get his perspectives across different geographies. Jeff runs one of the most successful online learning institutions. I think from what I remember, 7,000 different globally recognized institutions. Courses are offered on Coursera. He's the CEO of Coursera. And Raghu is the Dean of the Stern Business School in NYU, and as of yesterday now, the Senior Vice Chancellor of New York University. So we are all very proud to have such an esteemed panel with us. What I'm going to do is, just to save time, I'm going to jump straight in. And the first thing that I thought we should talk about is what is happening in the world today. So if you look at World Economic Forum, they have been talking about 50% of what kids are learning today, students are learning today, is not very relevant from what the institutions and employers want. And it's not just true for everywhere else in the world. The National Skill Development Council is basically saying in India it's 65%. So there is a very, very big divide, and we need to bridge that divide. So my first question, actually, I'll request both Jeff and Raghu to talk about it, and then I'll want Martin's perspectives as well. But maybe we'll start with Jeff. Jeff, how is the landscape changing? What are institutions doing? Are you, the two reputed institutions, working in tandem, competing? It'll be very interesting to talk about it. And my request as we run this session is, let's think from four aspects. One is the government, what the governments globally need to do and India need to do. Second is from the employer's perspective. Third is from an educational institution's perspective. And the fourth one is the most important, which is the kids themselves, the people who are getting educated. So over to you, Jeff, first.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. It's wonderful to be back. I was here in 2018, and it's a pleasure. The world has changed a lot since 2018. Those four stakeholders, I think, are all key players in this equation. This theme of disruption and development, I think, is spot on. The difference in disruption being a threat versus an opportunity, in my opinion, is the availability of high-quality education so that more people have equal access to the opportunities that are created because of this change. What we see in India at Coursera is a model that we are taking and talking about with other countries in the world. And in a very quick sketch here, here are the forces at play. The businesses need people with skills who can deliver value to their enterprise and to their customers. The students want to get an education and credentials so that they can avail themselves of economic opportunity and get those jobs. So the students and the employers are quite highly aligned. The universities are finding a pace of change that's pretty rapid, and I think beginning to really see the value of collaboration. I mean, it's hard for any single institution to keep up with how fast things are changing. And the government is laying the policy, here with the new education policy, the University Grants Commission, the National Skills Qualification Framework, not only to allow other universities to collaborate and provide online courses for credit to college degrees, but through NASCOM and the NSQF, industry content, micro-credentials can now be integrated into college degree programs for credit with the quality assurance that comes from the new education policy. So I think all the pieces are in place, and I think that the Indian structure here is really a model for other countries.
Raghu, your views? Thank you, Swadesh. I think Jeff has laid the framework out rather well. I just want to add a few points here. When we talk about things like skilling or reskilling or upskilling, the important thing is to keep in mind that, of course, at the start of your career, it's important to have the right skills, but increasingly, we have realized over the last 40 years how much skills get eroded over time. And for a long time, this was largely a blue-collar problem. In America, for example, all the auto jobs got sourced out, all the steel jobs. And there was this constant refrain from the time of President Reagan to the time of President Obama. The constant thing was go and get your skills refreshed, learn something new, and make yourself employable again. But it's not only a blue-collar problem. So I'll give an example from my own school. At Stern, we are located in New York City. A number of our students go to Wall Street. 30 years ago, on Wall Street, trading jobs, particularly currency trading jobs, are very popular for MBAs to get into. And currency trading was I think, about something like 40 students a year used to go into those jobs. 20 years later, currency trading was completely automated, which meant that if you'd finished your MBA at the age of 25, at 45 you were unemployable. You were in a job that has been completely automated. Whatever level of job we are in today, we are in a world that is changing so much that constant refreshing of one's skills is needed. Now I'm going to make a second point. Jeff was talking about micro skills. I think it's a question, when one talks about reskilling, Sunish laid out all the institutions that are involved, and really I think it's not what each of these institutions can do separately, but rather what they can do together. And I'm going to give you just one example in this point. Prior to the pandemic, there were only two views about education. Whatever one thought of education, there were only two views about education. There were the Courseras, the Udacities, who said everything can be done online, universities are redundant, they will die. There were universities who said nothing can ever be done online, you have to come here to study. The only way to study is with your friends in the classroom. The pandemic forced us all online, and very many valuable lessons were learned, but one of those lessons in universities particularly was we learned that neither statement was true. What we learned was there were some things that could be done very well online, some things that required much greater interaction, much deeper involvement of a classroom setting. So as we progress, one of the things that I've realized, I'm going to give a last example. I know I'm going on for a very long time, and I'm probably going to eat up everyone else's time. I'll give one last example of how reskilling works in partnership. Goldman Sachs has a magnificent program called 1 Million Black Women, where they are trying to identify black women entrepreneurs and provide them with the skills to succeed. Now, the program is aimed at black, what are called solopreneurs, single entrepreneurs. They have to be female, and they have to have a business with no employees. They are the sole employee of their business. The average revenue in these businesses, is about $30,000 a year, tiny businesses. But these are women who have been usually highly educated. Many of them have graduate degrees. They've gone to this as a second career. Many times entrepreneurship is not a choice, it's a necessity. But they don't have business skills. They don't have the time to go to graduate school in their 40s and 50s and try to pick up business skills. So what Goldman has created is a three-way partnership where, so Stern is their academic partner in this program, where we provide the academic classes in a micro, I should call it a nano MBA form. And then there are business advisors who then translate the lessons into the real world. And Goldman acts as the backstop, financing the whole program, but also providing capital for the businesses. This program has had enormous impact that you see on the ground between the three groups participating together. I think reskilling is really an issue of how it is done and how it is delivered.
Thank you, Raghu. Martin, as you think about this double disruption that a lot of people talk about, the pandemic and the changes in technology that are coming through, and you lived through this in Asia, in other geographies, what is your view? How does education need to adapt? You guys are also investing a lot in supplementing education, especially around the primary education. How does education need to evolve? And to this point around coexistence of the online-offline model, would love your views given you've seen it in several geographies in Asia.
I think I agree with everything my two co-panelists said. I would just add a couple of perspectives. The first is we've talked a lot about what happens when someone goes out of high school and moves into the job market or maybe comes out of higher education. I think we need to remember that the foundations for education are actually laid in the first 1,000 days of a child's brain development. If you miss those 1,000 days, your chances of ever developing your full intellectual and cognitive potential are severely impaired. So for many developing countries, this is still a big issue. In South Asia, we have about 40% of children that are stunted. Right? So they get a bad start in life right from the bat. And then in primary schools, if they don't learn the foundations, they're not going to catch the basic skills. So in South Asia, about 50% of kids by the age of 10 do not know how to read a sentence or solve the level mathematical questions that are put in front of them. So again, you get a disadvantage. So by the time you reach the point where we're talking about the qualification institutes, etc., you're already significantly disadvantaged. Second point that I would make is that I think what we've seen with the shift in the demand for skills is that emotional skills, social skills actually become as important as the technical skills. But the traditional rota form of front learning in the classroom doesn't actually impart those skills very well, which is why the collaboration that you both talked about is so important to create more of an interaction between the demands of the business and what the teachers are teaching. And that also means that educational institutions cannot just rest on providing certificates. The content, the excellence of that content is not captured in the certificate. And that provides an additional challenge for educational regulators who need to enforce the quality assurance framework. Now in India, you mentioned the new education policy. I think it's a great framework. It now needs to be implemented. So what we're doing here, we're starting with the state of Maharashtra, is basically to develop a program to put these new policies into practice. And I think this is the right moment for India to really move forward strongly on this agenda.
It's very important, and I would only underscore primary education. I think you have to uplift that. As we think about what the recruiters are thinking, sorry, I'm running a little faster because of the time, and people want to hear your views because you guys have a very, very, very important view around this. They are publicly coming out and saying 60% plus of people who are graduating, they frankly don't even find them job worthy, they need to be upgraded, reskilled. There are studies which are showing now at the age of 40, you need a serious reskill that needs to happen. And luckily for all of us, we are beyond that. But at least, Jeff, I think it'll be very interesting, maybe starting with you, how you think about it, what you're doing, and we'll try and keep it brief because I want to spend a little bit of time on what you guys have to say to the kids. That's the most important in my view, that we need to keep time for.
Yeah, so again, change brings opportunity and threat. I think what's happening with generative AI is that a lot more people are going to be impacted. I mean, almost every job that involves decision-making, communicating, and any kind of language or media. That's a lot of jobs. According to EY India, they just put the business services sector and the financial services sector in India as the two biggest sectors that will be impacted by generative AI. And I think what you're talking about is going to be probably now applicable to many, many jobs. At least a chunk of those jobs could potentially be automated. What we're looking at really is a question of how do you keep up with the rate of change, make sure you have the content and the credentials from branded institutions to deliver it. Integrating that into existing institutions is huge. So the NEP, and I think you're right, the implementation of the University Grants Commission, who said that 20% of credits, so long as they meet certain accreditation standards, can be delivered online in a collaborative way. So I think making that policy real and giving students the ability to have access to those courses is critical. We do have a lot of employers that we work with who actually use Coursera as what they call a finishing school, where they say, we're going to take the freshers that come out and we're going to run them through a few programs in Coursera before they start at our company. And so it's a way of almost supplementing the curricular experience in college. But with the NEP, you can build that content into the curricular program of colleges, and the universities don't have to go out and try to figure out how to hire another 500 professors in data science, computer science, and now with generative AI. It's just another high-demand skill. It's not only hard to learn them, but it's hard to find all the teachers to teach them. So I think this collaboration, is going to be the answer.
Martin, have you seen examples in other geographies that we as a country can learn from, who have been doing this upskilling and reskilling? Especially everywhere you read data sciences, actually, frankly, just communication skills are becoming more and more important as you go into the job market. Have you seen examples that we can learn from as a country?
I think countries follow different types of models. We have a good experience in Malaysia, where they have a very close relationship between the skilling institutes and the private sector. We were involved in Brazil in changing their model, which used to levy taxes on businesses for training courses, but that were very not really meeting the demands of industry. They're now allowing the industry to use that money to offer training courses themselves or hire partners from the private sector to offer the kinds of skills that they need. So that's an interesting model where the government still provides the regulation, but it's very much driven by industry. Of course, in East Asia, we have a lot of training models that are run by the companies themselves. So you join a company early on, and then they invest very heavily in training you up. So there are multiple models, but I think India has its own policy direction. I think we need a variety of experiments because things are changing so rapidly.
Raghu, you have been on the forefront of adopting technology. You were the first guys to come up with an MBA degree, which was a tech MBA degree. Today, technology a boon or bane? What's your view, and how should people prepare for it? And then in the end, just one last question for everybody.
So I think one has to be in a mode of constant learning, right? Because the world is changing so rapidly that lets one skills atrophy, then. So one of the things we started doing a few years ago is live streaming our courses. During the MBA program, our courses are live streamed to our alumni, who can register for free to take the courses. And every semester we find that it's increasing semester on semester. Hundreds of students are alumni registering to take these courses. Thousands have taken these courses already. And we're seeing this active interest in trying to keep pace with what's happening. You might have taken a course with the same title 5 years ago, but the material has changed dramatically. So,
no, very helpful. As we wind up, unfortunately, we're running out of time. What is the one advice you would give to students and younger kids coming out of going into primary school is too early, but I would say as they're thinking through what they want to do to come into this world where you have Gen AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, I mean, you name it, technology, evolution, everything happening, jobs that they think they want to try for are not going to be there, new jobs are going to get created. Maybe one advice that each of you have for these students would be very helpful from their perspective, because to me, that's the most important audience, to be honest. Whichever order you want to go. Maybe
well, I have 4 children. I tell them, follow your curiosity.
And I would say that what a lot of employers are looking for now is not a particular skill, it's learning ability. So stay curious, stay passionate, and keep your body and mind healthy so that you can learn your entire life.
Raghu, I think Jeff said exactly what I was going to say. The most important skill that everybody wants, employers, is primarily the ability to learn. And the ability to learn keeps to be kept fresh.
Thank you, guys. Absolute pleasure to have you. And thank you for the panel.
What an enlightening discussion. Thank you all so much for elaborating.